terms. So I thought that it would be appropriate to talk about this thing called dignity, especially today. We all know we're having a crisis of human dignity. People talk to each other or don't talk to each other. The polarization, socially, politically, and in so many different sectors of our world. So to understand dignity, I think we also have to go back to what defines us, who we are. What makes us tick? What defines a human being? I know it sounds like a very obvious question, but psychology hasn't really gotten to the bottom of it. There are many different theories. Is it our wealth, our net worth, our possessions, our homes, our opportunities, or is it something deeper? And hence the title, is your self-worth defined by your net worth? So I think a good anecdote to perhaps put things into context, one of my favorites was little Lucy's coming home from school, and she's beginning to study biology, the origin of our species. And, you know, we all know it could be quite confusing. So she goes over to her mother and says, "Mom, where do we come from?" Besides the obvious that a child comes from his parents, but where do you come from, and where do your parents come from, and how far back do we go? So her mother gives a broad smile, sits her down, and says, "Let me tell you, I was waiting for this day to be able to share with you some of our ancestors." And she begins to describe parents and grandparents and great-grandparents. Yeah, maybe their ancestry went back to the Mayflower or to other parts of the world. And with pride, she described, we are not alone. We are a product, sometimes the expression, we're like midgets that stand on the shoulders of giants that came before us. Beautiful. When Lucy's dad comes home, she asks him the same question. And in stark contrast to what her mother said, her father gets all disturbed, his face gets ashen, he sits her down and says, "I always rue this day where I have to explain to you where we originate from." And he begins to describe the evolutionary biological theory, and that is that millions of years ago, we originate from primates, apes, and before that from amphibians that were once in the sea and then made it out to land. And we go back a few more billion years to one-celled bacteria. And finally, as far as we've gotten, is a ball of gas right after the Big Bang. So you can imagine Lucy's very disturbed here, even more confused. Her mother gave her one answer, her father gave her another answer. So she runs back to her mother and says, "Mom, I don't understand. You and Dad gave me very different answers." So her mother chuckles and says, "We both told you the truth. Your father told you about his side of the family, and I told you about my side of the family." So there you have it, the ultimate reconciliation between creationism and evolution. It depends which side of the family. Why do we have to argue about it? And indeed, if you really look at it from a psychological point of view, what I like sometimes to refer to psycho-spiritual point of view, there's actually debates about this topic. You know, if you take a raw Freudian model, what lies at the heart of the human being is the id, the way he puts it, which is raw pleasure, sexual pleasure. And then there's an ego and superego that somewhat monitors and checks and balances to not be completely selfish and narcissistic. You look at, let's say, take another extreme, Viktor Frankl in Man's Search of Meaning. There, the heart of our beings is search for meaning in life. Very different versions. So in mysticism, especially Jewish mysticism, which actually is somewhat of a misnomer because the fact is mysticism is really universal. And as Simone said, and I totally believe in this, that the universal principles that we all share are very similar. Despite the difference of race and color and religion, faith, no faith, we all want love in our lives. We want to avoid pain. We want to bring up healthy families. Maybe we may have even disagreements, but fundamentally we all have core principles at our core. at our center. So really, the way the mystics put it is that we actually have both voices within us, and every one of us knows that. We have the voice that is all about me, self-interest, or we'll use the Darwinian survival of the fittest, dog eats dog, which can perhaps coexist with others, or it can turn violent, as we know. You know, they tell that joke where two guys go camping, middle of the night, one of them wakes up, and he hears a bear scurrying about, so he wakes up his friend and says, "We got to get out of here, there's a bear out there." And while he's telling him this, he's tying his shoelaces on his sneakers, and the friend says, "What do you think you can do? You're going to outrun the bear?" He says, "No, all I have to do is outrun you." So that's one voice. I hope none of us ever do that. But you know, there's always someone out there, like you know the story they say, it's not about me, I have a friend, you know. And then there's the other voice, which we all have as well. The altruistic voice, the noble one, the selfless one. The one where we will forego our own interests and our own comfort to help another. And thank God we see much of that as well in the world. And we have the conflict. There's nothing wrong to say there's a battle within each one of us, all the time. Every interaction, every encounter, personal choices, we always, now we can mix the two. I'm not saying it's mutually exclusive, but it is a choice. And in a sense, therefore, we do have both sides, this side of the family, that side of the family. So I'm not going to go into here a scientific discussion, the pros and cons of both arguments. There are plenty of essays and books written on this topic. I'll present what I believe it resonates with me, and hopefully may resonate with you as well. That at heart, we are not selfish, evil people. That the essence of us all, and I'll use the biblical term, which actually became the basis of the Declaration of Independence of this country, that every human being was created in the divine image. So the founding fathers put it this way: all men are created equal. If I was there, I would have written all people are created equal, not to create any... And even though those same people, many of them were slave owners, and yet they didn't even realize that they had written something that would ultimately compel us to free any slaves, because if all people are created equal, it includes all human beings. It doesn't matter what color, as I said, what race. God created us all. And they did put it in, even though they were deists, not necessarily religious, and there was a separation of church and state. I always thought about it. They write, all men are created equal. Created. They could have written all born equal. All people are equal and endowed by the Creator with inalienable rights. I've asked many constitutional attorneys, why did they use the word creator, which creates an element of what about someone who doesn't believe in a creator? I never got an adequate answer. My own little theory, and I'm saying this just as an aside, is I got the idea from insurance policies. There they write, you know, what it covers, what damages it covers, but then they'll say hurricanes or tornadoes or earthquakes or other acts of God are not covered. So there I asked an attorney, why do they write acts of God? Why not acts of nature? So he said, very obvious, because if it's acts of nature, you still can leave a doubt who's responsible for nature. If it's God, you have a perfect scapegoat. You blame God. So I guess when it's financially beneficial, God suddenly plays an important role. And nobody's called to abolish God from the insurance policies. I'm not trying to plant any ideas, you know. Anyway, food for thought. But let's get back to the topic at hand. And that is that the founding fathers, who were biblical scholars, as is known, documented, took this idea, and it became the foundation of freedom. Talk about home free. True freedom is based on the most important principle of all. Because if we, at the end of the day, are animals that just evolved billions of years, we don't prosecute a predator when it hunts down prey, because that's considered nature. A lion, a leopard, a tiger, or whatever the predator may be, you know, it may not be pleasant to see how they kill and hunt. However, it's nature. We don't say that about ourselves. So I understand, because we need some law and order to coexist. If you didn't prosecute, then there would be complete chaos, anarchy. But fundamentally, can we expect of ourselves and our children a true kindness when maybe it's survival of the fittest after all? I think for most of us it resonates that there's something more to us. And I'm not trying to make an argument for God or an argument for the soul, but the Founding Fathers understood, and I think we all understand, take that away of the basis of a country or basis of a company, then it's just a matter of time where some people will consider themselves more equal than others, and we've seen how that has been abused. Start playing God and decide who's better than other. In other words, we're all equal. It makes no difference who you are. Every person on this earth, and for that matter, I would say every fiber of existence, is absolutely necessary and absolutely divine. If you don't like the word divine, use the word transcendent. As a writer on words, I've figured out many different synonyms that are more politically correct. So with that in mind, when you think about it, our education and our schooling, how much are we taught about that part of ourselves? If that's truly who we are, I would say the best education we get is more about how to become efficient, how to make money, how to buy a home, how to become wealthy. And many of us think that that is the definition of our of success. But that's not true at all. I often ask people, I meet them, I say, who are you? And they say they take out their business card. I say, that's not who you are, that's what you do. Yeah, good point. So some people say, well, I've been doing it so long, what I do has become who I am. That's like saying that the ship is telling the captain where to go instead of the captain telling the ship where to go. Or as some people put it this way, are we physical beings, and at times, from time to time, we have a spiritual journey, or are we spiritual beings on a physical journey? It's not semantics. It's a very different way of looking at ourselves. So I think as we gather leaders like yourself, very often we get caught up in the quotidian, the routines of life, the monotony. Even if our work is very noble work, but there's that element of tediousness. And it's sometimes important to go back to the roots, like why we do what we do. Who are we? What defines us? I remember when I was a little child, and I asked my father when I first read during the Wall Street crash in 1929 it was, I wasn't born yet, so I don't remember the year. But so I heard about people literally jumping out of windows, committing suicide because they lost their entire fortune. I asked my father, as a little kid, I said, why would someone kill themselves because they lost money? What do children know about money? And don't they have a family? They have so many other things of value. So my father first said to me, you'll get older, you'll understand. I got older, and I came to understand because people define themselves not by who they are, but what they do, or what others think of them, or what society has determined is successful. And I remember talk about children, my own son, little boy, comes home from school, he was so excited. He heard something beautiful, and he shared it with me. He said, I heard today you were born an original, don't become a copy. And it touched me that he was, and I will never forget, years later, today he's a father of his own. He's 40. And I asked him recently, I said to him, do you remember that? He didn't even remember. So he said, but that's what you told me. So what happened with you? Are you a copy or an original? So no pun intended, he happens to be a copywriter. And so he said to me, he's a wordsmith. He likes to play with words. So he said to me, I'm an original copy. And that was it. I don't even know what it means. One of my favorite poems is from Oliver Wendell Holmes. It's called The Voiceless. Tragically opens up with this line. Alas to those that die with their song still inside them. So we all have a song inside of us, but then life takes over. Was it John Lennon that said, life is what happens to you while you're busy making other plans? Expectations, parents, educators, others, You need a job, so you fall into something. I'm not saying all our jobs are necessarily not valuable, but many people don't like their jobs. And even if you don't, you start liking it even though it's not really you. So the key point I want to share is this, talk about dignity, is your beginnings, especially when we were born, you weren't yet lenders or homeowners or helping others homeowners. You were a little child, a new soul that entered into a body, and innocent, pure, impressionable. And that, what some call the inner child, is still right there inside of you, inside of me, inside of all of us. And then many things happen, many trappings, many beautiful things happen in life. But we never should forget that core essence. Some like to call it a soul. You can call it your song. You can call it your calling, your mission. And that should be defining everything else that you do in life. In other words, even if you have a great job, and I'm sure you're all doing unbelievable things, it's the job that grows out of who you are rather than the job defining you. And the challenge is to integrate the two, to find a way to find soulfulness in what you do. And I'll give you an example. I wrote a book called Toward a Meaningful Life. It was published by William Morrow. It's almost 30 years now. And it did quite well, translated into 14 languages, sold over 1 million copies. I'm only saying that to give it a little description. And there's a gentleman who had read the book at the time, talking about over 20 years ago. He was known, I don't want to use his name without his permission, but he was known as a cutthroat CEO businessman. Ethical, but tough, one of these tough guys. At home, he was a lamb, which is often the case. But at work, one of the toughest people you'll ever meet. He called me one day. He read my book, and he read a chapter on work and productivity, talking about exactly this point, how you integrate work with your spirit, with your soul, with your mission. And I wrote there, one of the suggestions is, at your workplace, not just at home, have a charity box on your desk. And every day, put a penny, a nickel, a dollar, whatever you want to pay. So he said, I decided to do that. And in doing that, every time I had a meeting, people saw the charity box. They saw I always put something in there. And then I began to give it to my whoever came to see me. And they started asking me, why do you have a charity box? It doesn't seem like you're a charitable guy exactly. And he explained to them, because he wants to infuse his work with something with deeper meaning. He says, it literally changed my life, that little act. It changed my life, and it changed the people that came to see me, and it changed our relationships, because then we started talking about personal matters. It wasn't just this tough business negotiation. They realized I'm a human being, they're a human being. We all have a heart, a soul. He says, I'm still a tough businessman, but it changed things. And to take it a step further, especially when you're doing work that is helping others, it is spiritual work. It's just manifesting in financial terms or in homeownership terms or whatever it is that we're involved in. And to really revive or reignite the spirit and not see your work as just another day of work is always to remember that connection. And that can be through every morning beginning with a prayer or a song or a poetry. Just like we need physical exercise, our soul also needs exercise. I like to refer to a spiritual spa. Spa being study, prayer, action. Basically cognitive, emotional, and behavioral conditioning. Get your head into a more loftier or more sublime place. Emotions. Listen to a song you like. Read a poem, prayer, whatever works for you. And action, behavioral. An act of kindness, an extra act of kindness. Charity. Call someone that may be in need. Show gratitude. I mean, the list goes on. But you do it deliberately, not by rote, not mechanically, and you'll see it'll change your life. Literally, just like exercise does for the body. So, what are the implications of this approach, and how does it define our dignity? It changes everything. First of all, many people, how do they deal with that battle that I spoke about before, the two voices within us, the selfish voice and the selfless voice? So most of us compartmentalize. There are times we take care of ourselves, and then we volunteer, weekends, moments that we look for transcendence, whether it's through music, art, travel, love, sexuality, faith, compartmentalization. However, the beautiful thing is that you don't need to compartmentalize, because the fact of the matter is, especially science has really corroborated this these days, the last century, the integration, that there isn't really no two worlds of duality of, let's say, matter and energy. The most famous equation, E equals mc squared, that matter and energy are reversible, also has psychological meaning. That our bodies and souls are two entities, but they're not necessarily two separate entities. You could spiritualize the material world. It doesn't have to be a consistent, tenuous tension between the two. You could integrate them. How? By using your material activities for something of higher purpose. So the first thing is that this approach creates much more integration in our lives. And we know when you have integration rather than fragmentation or compartmentalization, you're generally more peaceful, you're more at peace. Because you don't have to battle all those voices constantly. You have a selfish desire, fine. So find some way to do that as well, that in a way that helps others as well. There's an analogy one of the Hasidic masters gives. When you're cold, now it's very warm here, but Minneapolis can get very cold. You could either put on a fur coat, and then you're warm and no one else is. Or you can light a fireplace, and then everybody gets warmed. So it could be selfish and selfless at the same time, as an example. But it's about being conscientious, thinking about it. Another implication would be that recognizing, and here's where dignity really comes into play, the dignity of the journey of every individual. You know, when I look at you, I've been trained this way, and thank God I see you all as beautiful souls. I may not know you who you are, but you're here on earth, and you were put here. You have a unique mission. You have a mission that's indispensable. A song or many songs to sing that I could learn from, and we could all learn from. And frankly, the whole human race is really a bunch of indispensable musical notes in one cosmic composition. And we need each other. You know, think of an orchestra. Someone decides not to play their instrument at the right time. Everyone's compromised. So this approach also, and put it this way, spirituality unites and materialism divides. That's a rule. Check it out. So when we see ourselves as spirits in bodies, each with our unique mission, it's a whole different way of respecting each other. That doesn't mean I have siblings. I disagree with sometimes very passionately with them, but I love them. Disagreement doesn't mean that you have to hate or you have to be divisive. So that's number two. It creates a fundamental respect of the uniqueness and the indispensability of every individual. Number three, the difference between survival-centric life and a mission-centric life. Survival means whatever comes away, you have to figure out how to survive. Mission-centric means you define and say, today, I have a mission in my life. And that's going to define what I do. Not what I do defines my mission. Now, obviously, there's always situations where there's expectations, demands. You know, we all have responsibilities. I'm not suggesting we forget all about that. But it's another type of mindset. And finally, the concept of recognizing that we need to be proactive, not just reactive. It's very different. My father was a journalist. He used to tell me there are three types of people. People who make things happen, people who watch things happen, and people who ask what happened. I would like to believe, and I'm sure this is the case, all of you are people who make things happen. But many people in this world are not that way. Not because they can be, because they weren't either encouraged to be or they were actually discouraged to be that way. You know, a lot of people want us to be conformists. I've traveled and spoken to many audiences. Often I ask people, how many conformists in the room? Nobody ever raises their hand. No conformist likes to suggest they're conformist. So I can report to you there are no conformists on this earth, but we know that's not the case. This doesn't mean we have to be, as I said, anarchy, but there is a certain element of, we'll call it revolution in our hearts and souls that needs to be accessed. And you need to have the courage, and you need to have friends that encourage you to speak up, to take initiative, and be proactive. Where are we time-wise? No? Oh, okay, great. So, I think each of us know in our hearts, sometimes when we pause and we have to create space, because you're busy going 90 miles an hour, the rush hour of our lives, we don't have time to stop and smell the roses, as they say, or to see the trees from the forest. I know it's supposed to be forest from the trees. I know it's a confusing statement. But since we're here together, this is a perfect time for that. I personally use call it a mantra, if you wish, or a meditation every morning. It comes from Jewish sources, but it's very universal. It's called Moda Ani in Hebrew. It's basically, thank you for returning my soul to me. No mention of whom, but thank you for returning my soul to me. So first of all, it's opening the day immediately as soon as you wake up. Most people don't have a business meeting as soon as they wake up. So showing gratitude for life, for your gifts, for your opportunities, and for your very soul, the very fact that you exist. It deserves a thank you. Obviously to the people in our lives, that our loved ones, our parents, others that helped take care and shape and nurture us. But also, whatever your belief system dictates, you're not self-made human being. You came from somewhere. Secondly, I see it as a tremendous way of declaring our mission in life. No business, everyone knows Business 101 is every business plan, every organization, every institution needs a mission statement. Someone comes to you for an investment and says, hey, I'd like you to invest $100, even $100 in my company. You say to them, so what's the mission of your company? And they give you an answer like this, well, it's very long. I don't know if you have time and patience to listen. Or haven't developed it yet, or we have several options. Or we decided not to go with the mission. You tell me how much you're going to invest. Because it's ridiculous. Without a mission, what's the focus? How do you keep efficient? How do you make sure there isn't waste? Look how many companies fail with mission statements, So think of it now personally. What's your personal mission statement? When I ask people, some people look at me and they say, I never thought of it that way. How could you be efficient if you don't have a mission statement? And I'm not talking about the mission of your work, your job. That's part of the company you work for. Your personal mission statement, where you're not at work. So some people are so consumed with work as 24/7, that becomes their mission. Now, no one really taught us this. Schools don't talk about this. Talk about the mission of your soul, the mission of your life. But a mission statement, as we all know, needs to be short, unique, can't be generic platitudes. Just comes to mind, I hope, Google's mission statement. I hope there are no anti-Google people here or whatever, but that's not my point. I'm not trying to promote them. Their mission statement is to organize all the information of the world and make it readily accessible. I think Microsoft, at the beginning at least, it was a computer in every home and in every office. These are unique, short, and yes, you could have hundreds of thousands and millions of employees, and they're all ultimately have to live up to that mission. It takes on many shapes and forms and many directions. In my personal case, I was blessed when I was already I guess 18, 19, I began to identify my own skills, and I wanted to do something to make a mark in this world. So if you ask me my mission, I would say to use my writing, speaking, and communication skills to help people find their mission. That's not a cop-out. Tell people, what I like to put it this way, is to clear out the blockages in their system to allow them to access their inner voice. Until this day, and I like to tell people I'm 17 years old with 49 years of experience. You can figure out my age if you like to take a second. I know people like to do that. I still have that driving. That's my driving engine. Is it always easy? No, of course not. At times, you're not in the mood. Things happen. There's setbacks. There's challenges, funding issues, et cetera, et cetera. I run a nonprofit myself, Meaningful Life Center, with the staff. We all know there's the ups and downs. But I always go back, and that's what refreshes me. And I think, let's go back to the point of departure. Why did I do this in the first place? And that's where I reignite my own sense of mission. So obviously I'm encouraging you all to do that. That's our way. It's one of the tricks of the trade of how you reinvigorate yourself. But today we live, as I mentioned earlier, in plenty of crisis. The divisiveness is terrible. The media is not helping at all. So where do you turn to? Leaders? I don't even know what to say. Everyone has probably their opinions on this matter. I honestly don't see leadership. I'm not saying people aren't good people and they may have good ideas. There's a lot of performance going on, a lot of pandering. What inspired me when I was a young man, a younger man, I should say, was I had a spiritual mentor who focused completely not about survival. It was all about how you're going to change the world for the better. We have real challenges. Our children are coming into a world. What do you tell them when they start hearing about what this one says about this one and this one says about that? That's why I think it's more vital than ever that we need to create a grassroots revolution. I don't know if things are going to change from the top down. And honestly, please don't read into what I'm saying. I'm not criticizing anyone. I'm speaking about us all. I always like to say there's another Talmudic wise statement that says, every generation gets the leaders it deserves. So what does that tell us about us? Not only about what's going on in Washington or in other capitals across the world, that we need a grassroots revolution. At the end of the day, we can only be responsible for ourselves. Obviously, we can make some decisions that will affect others. But if we focus and we reconnect to live an inside-out life instead of an outside-in life, like I said, mission-centric, soul-centric, purpose, and we teach it to those around us. Remember, another scientific concept is the butterfly effect. One little act here, a butterfly flapping its wings, has an effect, a ripple effect that affects others. And especially with technology today, it's so easy for a positive viral message. Just everyone in this room right here, where they say 5 degrees of separation. If each of us would carry this message to ourselves and to our close ones, our sphere of influence, that you have a unique soul, and encourage each other to live up to sing your song and not die with your song still inside you, that has a certain power to impact who knows how many. But again, it's not a numbers game. It's just a shift in a paradigm shift, a qualitative shift. So if my words have any impact, I hope it inspires everyone here to do something in that direction, each in our own way. And I'll conclude with one of my favorite lines from Michelangelo, the great sculptor, the great artist. He was once asked, how do you sculpt those beautiful angels in the marble? And it was his response, I see the angels trapped in the marble, and I carved and set them free. Home free. I set them free. It's amazing. In other words, the beauty is right there. You don't have to purchase a book. You don't have to go buy something. The whole marketing out there that if you buy this, you look like that, you travel here, you're going to be a better person. No, your self-worth has nothing to do with your net worth, has nothing to do with your possessions. It should be an outgrowth of your self-worth. Your self-worth is right there inside you. However, it can be trapped in marble, it can be trapped in concrete, it can be trapped in other substances. You can fill in the blanks. Life, what happens to us in life? The challenges in life, the tragedies of life, the traumas, they all tend to so-called entrap that angel or music or flower within you. So our job is not to go find it somewhere, it's to carve away, to realize what's a means and what's an end, what's the mission and what's the means to fulfill that mission. Again, to live inside out instead of outside in, and to find people that support that. Because you'll have plenty of detractors who will tell you, don't get so excited, this idealism belongs to naive teenagers, There'll be plenty of people who will throw cold water on these ideas. But that's where you have to make things happen. So I want to conclude with a greeting, a blessing, if I may, to each of us. In a few weeks will be the New Year, the Jewish New Year, Rosh Hashanah. But many people don't know that's actually a universal New Year, because what was happened on that day? It was the creation of Adam and Eve, the first human beings, according to the Bible. We're all their children, all of us. So we all have the same fathers and mothers. How do you like that? It's just over time that it branched out, and then we think we're different. So we are different. We're diverse. That's beautiful. But diversity is actually the root of all beauty. Have you ever seen beauty without diversity? What is a beautiful face? Is it the eyes, the ears, the nose, the complexion, the mouth? It's some type of confluence, a combination of all of them in a symmetrical way. Beauty. Blue may be your favorite color. Red may be a beautiful color. One musical note may make a nice sound, but it's monotonous. The beauty of music, the beauty of art, is harmony within diversity. And that's exactly what the human race was always meant to be. So may each of you and all of us be blessed to access that indispensable musical note that you are, the angel. Carve away the trimmings, the excesses, and allow that to sing, because we all need it and we need each other. I can't be complete if you don't do it, and hopefully you can't be complete if I don't do my part. 8 billion people are just 8 billion individuals like ourselves. Imagine we could get this message to every one of them, what life would look like. God bless you all, and maybe experience in our lifetime this harmony within diversity. The words of Isaiah the prophet, no more evil, no more destruction, no more selfishness, because the world will be filled with divine knowledge as the waters cover the sea. Thank you so much.